All right, let's do this. Peanut, if you're staying in the room, no talking. Hello, and welcome to the PhotoWork podcast, the talky and touchy-feely version of my book, PhotoWork, 40 Photographers on Process and Practice. I am Sasha Wolf, joined as usual by my friend and producer, my brother from another mother. Oh, God. What? Reunited and it feels good.
We are going back in time.
I mean, both those references were just like as cheeseball-y as you can get. But my feelings for you are strong. And I missed you. Michael Dalton.
Yes, back. Thank you.
Holy cow.
Missed you too. It was quite a turbulent few weeks we had.
We can never be separated again. It's too painful. But how you doing?
I'm doing all right. You know, things are back on track. And you had a nice little trip for yourself there.
I did. I took my first plane ride, not of my life. But
but we all know what that means when you say that now. Yeah. And how was it?
So it was good. I was, fairly nervous. But anyway, it wasn't the plane that I was nervous about. It was that I was going to Chicago for Filter Photo Festival, which I do most years. I'm on the advisory board, and I love the group of people that run Filter. And I have a lot of good friends in Chicago. I love that city. And it's just... I love photo festivals and portfolio reviews because it feels like this really great pro bono sort of thing that people like me do. Mm-hmm. And that just feels really great. And then there's just such a strong sense of camaraderie and community that I really love. So
the energy is always so good, right?
The energy is awesome until the last day when everyone's exhausted. But yeah, it's really... So it was great. What I was nervous about was just sort of being in a hotel for, I think I was there for 6 days, and and being in a room with people, sort of going in and out, and anyway, I think I'm okay. Just got home last night, so check back in a few days. But it was wonderful to be with so many people in our community again, for sure. And
I know that's wild. I mean, is that the first large event you've been to then?
I've been to a couple. I went to the sort of party that ICP had for the show, but
that's right.
And that was but I was nervous there too.
Understandable.
But this was really felt like the first sort of big normal thing. Mm-hmm. And I felt really joyful for most of the time. And then I had the wonderful experience of coming home to Peanut, and our reunion was very special.
A very special Peanut and Sasha reunion.
Very special. So got my dog back, got my girl, my little sidekick. Maybe I'm her sidekick, by the way. I actually think there's a distinct possibility that I'm Peanut's sidekick. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure the entire family here is Susie's ward.
Yeah. I think Peanut in the park this morning when she saw her friends was just like, I got my sidekick back. There she is, ragging behind. Before I forget, by the way, I want to just acknowledge my good friend, Amy Moskowitz, who is a graphic designer and redid our logo. So, Amy, thank you so much.
And it looks so good.
Yeah,
it's a nice, clean tile for the podcast.
Yeah.
And it looks great as a banner. Yes, so good.
Yeah, so thank you, Amy. That is awesome. Mm-hmm. Appreciate that. So, getting to the episode, which was a conversation that I had with the photographer Alessandra Sanguinetti, what did you think?
I just loved it. Alessandra, the way she opens up and talks about the idea of confidence and, the kind of crises that can sort of take you off your game and make you question whether or not you're still a good photographer. Really, it's very heartfelt and meaningful, and it meant a lot to me. It really did. And then you have a conversation about being a sort of part of this great history of storytelling. Yeah, I mean, just so many good things in this episode.
Yeah, I have to say, I really have to sort of go back through all the previous episodes, and which I haven't done, but I'll just say that I feel like it's the most personal.
Yeah.
It feels the most sort of raw, honest. I think it's an incredible episode. I love it. I mean, I was in the conversation, and then when I listened back after you edited, I was so moved.
Yes.
So I wrote to Alessandra and just told her that it was one of my favorite episodes, to which she
nice.
replied, I'll bet you say that to all the guests, but
we love all our guests.
but I don't say that to all our guests. Yeah, I think this episode is really special. So.
Moving was the right word. I was very moved as well. Yeah.
Well, why don't we get to it then without further ado? Michael, if you don't mind, please take it away.
My pleasure. And here's your conversation with Alessandra Sanguinetti.
All right, Alessandra, welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for doing this with me. I was really looking forward to talking with you.
Hi, Sasha. I'm happy to be here.
So let's get started the way we always do. If you could just tell people about your bio, your background, how you got to where you are today and where you are today. Like, where are you? What are you doing? What's happening? All that stuff. You were born in New York.
Thanks for the tip. You know, the older I get, the less sure I am about everything. I thought it was going to be the other way around. I thought, like, by the time I was 52, I would just, like, be wise and understand myself, and I could define myself, but it's the exact opposite.
I think that's actually a sign of maturity, because I think when we're young, we think we sort of know it all, and I think wisdom comes with realizing how much we don't know, including about ourselves. So,
yeah,
anyway.
But it doesn't feel good.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, I was born in New York. My dad's Argentine and my mom's from the States, Brooklyn. And they met there, they had us, and then when I was 2, they moved back to Argentina. So that's why I come from Argentina, even though I'm American. And I grew up in Argentina and lived there until I was 30, when with my ex-husband, we decided just to go spend a couple of years at my grandfather's house in Brooklyn and, you know, look for a gallery, that kind of thing. And 2 years ended up being until now, for me at least. And I started taking pictures when I was little. I never thought about being a photographer. I actually never thought about what I wanted to be. My parents never explained to me that you had to make a living, or that, you know, like, I was kind of feral. I had nothing explained to me. They were very loving, but, and yeah, so I would just take pictures forever about everything since I'm 9. And then I studied anthropology for 2 years after school. And mostly what I did was just ask people to take their portraits. I would drag them downstairs and pin them against the white wall, because I was into Avedon then, and just photograph them against the white background. And that was my way of making friends, because I didn't know how. I was too shy. And then I quit, and I went to ICP in 92, and that's when I realized, oh, you know, it's a thing. You can be a photographer. And fast forward to now.
Yeah, where are you now? And you know, how are you? What are your sort of associations? And are you teaching? Are you just making work? And
yeah, I live in California, in Petaluma, with Jim Goldberg. And I have my little studio in the garage. And I'm working on a few different things. And I teach workshops now and then, but I don't consider myself a teacher. Mm-hmm. I think to consider yourself a teacher takes much more I just, when I give workshops, I just try to help out.
Yeah. I mean, I will say I did a couple days with you and Greg Halpern. You're both Magnum photographers. You guys asked me to guest critique, and I thought you were an amazing teacher. That's why I'm bringing this up. I thought you were so, maybe I should have said this before we started recording, because maybe it's not that interesting to anyone else, but I thought you were so fantastic because you were so clear. And, anytime I wasn't clear, you would sort of come in and help translate what I was saying. And I thought your manner was really kind and supportive but firm. I thought, yeah, so anyway, I think you're a natural teacher.
No, I only do workshops now if I can do it together with somebody else. Mm-hmm. With Greg, it was wonderful because we're both, we just like each other and kind of think alike. Mm-hmm. And it just makes it more interesting for me. And I think it makes it more interesting for the students to have two viewpoints and hear Greg and I disagree on something or read something differently, to play off each other. When it's like that and relaxed, I feel good about it. But if I have to be like lecturing no, I just don't enjoy that. No.
So how did you get involved? I think you're still represented by Yossi. Yes?
No,
you're not at Yossi. So you're just sort of solidly parked at Magnum.
Yeah, I've been a member. Well, I've been in Magnum since 2006.
Okay.
But that's a whole different world than the gallery world. It doesn't. With Yossi, we parted ways a couple of years ago. And right now, I don't have a gallery. I haven't been actively looking, but at some point I will.
Okay. Well, we're really going to talk then when we stop recording. Anyway, I feel like you're really well known for a few bodies of work. I think on the sixth day, which is such a beautiful body of work, and you can explain it. But I feel like on the sixth day, that's when I first, learned about you, first saw your work. But then when the adventures of, and I'm going to try my best to pronounce this, when the adventures of Guille and Belinda and the enigmatic meaning of their dreams, that's a mouthful, but such a great title. When that book came out, that body of work, it's so powerful that I feel like it just solidified your reputation, because it's it's a word I love. People might have to look it up, but it's so sui generis. It's so original and so totally yours. And it's so powerful that it sort of was almost hard to associate you with anything else after that. And then you did a follow-up with the girls recently, which is very different. But I wonder if you can tell people a bit about On the Sixth Day and then how that sort of rolled into the first book with the girls, because I feel like they're very connected. And if you feel like that has, you have that awareness of how dominant that is in people's minds when they think of you, because you've done other work that's very different, and I love, by the way, but it is, the work with the girls and on the farm is so seared in my brain.
Yeah. On the sixth day, that would be my first body of work that I feel was truly mine.
Yeah.
And in reality, it started, I think, when I was a kid, because I would spend summers and weekends in my dad's farm. He had some cattle, and I would just, I would just explore and be on my own and just watch the goings on. I wasn't made to work, I would just be observing everything. And I just remember watching the animals, and I always, I think most kids do, but with me it lasted forever. I always empathize with the animals more than with people.
Yeah.
To the degree that I made up this god animal that I called Dios Animal, with the wrong accent on it to differentiate from animal. And I would pray for it and ask forgiveness for what humanity was doing to the animals. And it was like a little knit thing when I had learned how to knit, and I put in like little pieces of paper with my favorite song lyrics in it. I remember I had the Beatles' What's the name of the song? What would you do if I do?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, don't ask me to sing. People will press stop if they're
Anyway, I'm
listening.
sorry. I'm completely diverging, but that's really where On the Sixth Day comes from. And I'm sure The Adventures is also informed by all that and some kind of nostalgia for my childhood. But one thing I that's like seared in my brain from when I was little is I would watch when the caretaker would round up the sheep in the corral once a week. You know, the caretaker can have as many sheep as they want and then kill one each week to feed the family. And I would just watch that and I was like, I just felt so bad for the sheep. You know, they knew that something was going on because every week they would see one of them disappear.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway, so fast forward, when I was in New York in ICP, I was doing work. I was mostly photographing children at that point for that series, Sweet Expectations. But when the time to go home came closer, I just had like these vision sounds like a grand word, but just these images that I wanted to do when I got home to Argentina. I just missed the farmland, and I knew that I wanted to do something there. I wanted it to be in color. I knew there was a story that hadn't been told yet, but I didn't know exactly how to make it a little shorter. I started working in the farm and I would photograph everything, the gauchos, the work, this and that, and the animals until I realized that it was the story of the animals that I was closest to. And I just photographed, ordinary farm animals. And I found myself on my knees all the time because I wanted to be on eye level with them, and I didn't think of it this way at the time, but I guess I was just trying to see life in the farm through the animals' eyes.
Right, because a lot of the photographs do feel like, they either feel like the animal's point of view or the point of view of another animal.
Right.
Like it's another animal with a camera, not a person. I mean,
right.
Which is amazing.
And, and I wouldn't agree with somebody saying I don't know how to pronounce this, anthropomorphizing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you pronounce?
Yeah, anthropomorphizing. Yeah.
I actually don't believe in that term, because we're all living creatures and we understand each other whatever way we want to understand each other. And there's no wrong way. If I project something onto an animal, that's just as valid as if I didn't. I really believe that. So that's on the sixth day. And then it overlapped a little when I began the adventures. Because I had been gone for a residency, so I was gone for a few months, and I was diagnosed with a chronic illness, one of those like rare things, and had to take tons of prednisone and all that for a long time. But I went back to the farm to sort of like rest and continue work on the sixth day, but I really wasn't connected. I was like, my mind was somewhere else, and I had just gotten, I just had a big scare. It was the first time I was like sick in my life. So being around animals and slaughtering, I just wasn't into it, and I just found myself spending time with Juana's granddaughters. Juana is a woman that I would visit a lot and photograph her animals all along the years. And Guille and Billy are her granddaughters, and they were always hanging around. So I just started hanging around with them. I took some photographs, some portraits of them, thinking, I could use this for Sweet Expectations, a black and white series on kids. And then I started to film them because I had this remember it was the 90s, no cell phones, no real video cameras, that were accessible. I started to film them with a little, almost, it's not a Fisher Price, but a very simple video camera, because I just couldn't have enough of them. I loved Belinda's sing-song voice, and I loved Guillermina's earnestness. So I would photograph them in color and black and white. I would film them, I would play with them, and I would feel really guilty that I was just wasting all that time with two little girls, that I should be like doing my real work. But at some point, after, developing all the film and sitting with it, I realized that I wasn't wasting my time.
Yeah.
That there was a story to be told. So I started organizing it a little bit more, just finding a loose structure to it.
It's funny. I'm going to quote you back to yourself because, as I do a lot of research before these podcasts, and you did what I thought was a great interview on the Magnum website with someone named Matthew. I think it's Leafheight. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, Matthew. I'm sorry, but something like that. And you actually, in talking about the work, you said to him, I think I've always been kind of immature. I have a hard time talking to adults, but I'm fine talking to kids. So when I was with them, our relationship came instinctively. When they got a little older, I began to feel awkward because they seemed more adult than me. I love that you said that. I was going to see them in making pictures, which is nothing useful. It's not a real job. At a certain stage, they already had more grown-up jobs than I had. And then you go on to say how comfortable you felt with them when they were young and how much you loved them. And I just love that answer. I just think it's so fantastic. But I think it's important just to mention here because obviously, without that reality, you wouldn't have made that body of work, right? I mean, It's because you had that relationship to them where you felt so on their level in a lot of ways, which is really just wonderful, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't something that I was looking for. It just came organically from life. I couldn't dream that up. I don't have that much imagination. I need people to play with.
So something really, I don't know, it's interesting. So there's that work which is it is all imagination. It's pictures of the girls acting out various hilarious. I mean, the book is really funny. I mean, I laugh out loud so much when I'm looking through it because it's the girls acting out adult like scenarios, but they're these little kids, so it's just so funny. But it's all imagination, their imagination, your imagination, and your pictures during that time, the sixth day and this work is so incredibly saturated. It's color and it's so saturated. It's really lush. It's a very specific palette. And then you made a body of work called Sorry, Welcome. That's black and white and completely different, which I also love. But I think that work is so fantastic. And then you did other things, but then you went back and you did another series of the girls who are now grown-ups and have their own kids. And the work then becomes sort of a combination between the first series of work of the girls and then Sorry, Welcome, and other work you did. And then it sort of becomes, an amalgam. But in that same interview on the Magnum website, you talk about, well, I'll read what you said. I think that this process of change over time was also something of a source of conflict when it came to trying to put the book together over these last few years. I guess I had a hard time because I was working with older images and a different way of photographing than I had in previous years. So I had a sense that I needed to adjust to that or accept it. Can you talk about that? Because I found that really fascinating and sort of unique. I haven't heard many people sort of talk about that or go through something like that where, their work shifts and yet they're sort of working on an ongoing project. And so that their way of working shifts. And so that can create some tension as it seemed to for you.
Yeah, the thing is, to make this second book, I was dealing with photographs I had made since 2004 until 2019.
Right.
Which is a long time for anybody, but it's even longer for kids, for Guille and Billy, who were 10 and now they're like 29. Went through so much. And they changed so much, of course. Yeah. And I changed so much. I moved away. I had changes in my personal life that also changed the way I saw them. Mm-hmm. And I photograph maybe differently now. I don't know. I just don't think I'm as good at photographers before.
Well, that's interesting. So let me, because one other thing I thought was really interesting was I watched a video conversation that you had with Jonas Bendixson. Mm-hmm. I did a deep dive into you. I unearthed everything. You asked him if he ever had a crisis with photography, doubting if it was of any use or if he should just do something else. And I was really struck by that question because it sounded like it came from personal experience. So,
yeah, well, I went through that. I think most people go through it. But yeah, I had like 2, 3, 4, 4 years that I was disenchanted with photography. And
with photography or with your photography?
I mean, I can't separate it.
Yeah.
And that was hard because my whole identity is with photography. That's the way I deal with the world. It's not something I do. It's not that I set time aside to do that.
Yeah.
I think I was kind of depressed, to be honest. Which started what, I don't know. But I just was questioning the usefulness of anything. But that, of course, affected, I was going back to Guille and Billy in the book, I was trying to sequence it for 5 years and I was never satisfied. I wasn't sure what was the story I was telling. Why was I telling it? I wasn't sure who Guille was anymore, who Billy was, or who I was. So I kept putting it off. I always just went against a wall. And then I think it's also when I emerged from all that self-doubt that suddenly everything started coming together. And I started to get friendlier with myself and with my work. And as soon as I got friendlier with myself, I would just be kinder towards the work. So I went through all the folders and suddenly I saw I had edited everything wrong. I saw frames that I had thought were the final ones that I had chosen and they were set in stone. And I realized it was a frame right next to that one. That was the real deal. So I did an overhaul of all the editing and everything fell into place. But I think it had to do with sort of having some peace with myself and also not be so demanding. I thinking that everything had to be this huge masterpiece or because it was a little pressure to do something after the first book that was so loved.
I know people may get annoyed with me for saying this, but I think that's a sort of more, this happens more to women, I think, than men. Makes me sad. I see women, girls, and you start seeing it when girls are like 11, 12, 13 years old, where all of a sudden they just start doubting themselves all the time. And, you can put it off and then it comes rearing back. But I'm sure that was just incredibly painful. I mean, I've gone through that myself for sure, many times. And it's really hard. Did you have anyone help you sort of snap out of it? Or was it something you just had to happen on your own?
No, it just nobody can help you when you're self-doubting
I agree
and stuff.
With that.
It just falls on deaf ears.
Yeah.
No, I just snapped out of it. And, I asked Jim all the time for help on sequencing it. But, and he's brilliant, as you know, making books and all that. But it wouldn't really help because his vision is so different than mine. He would have wonderful ideas, but they weren't for me, And, of course, he would be super encouraging. But in the end, it was my sequence. It worked when I did it myself. Of course, I had help. I asked Greg, I asked a few select people, what do you think? Does this spread work or not? But just like very specific things. But the overall feeling of it, I had to find myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how that happens. I know she's spoken about this in public, so I'm not saying anything that isn't out there. But, Julian Laub, the photographer, her new book that just came out with Aperture, and it's about her family. And she's been working on this for over 20 years. And the book was supposed to go to press, I think, last January, and for a spring release. And at the last minute, Julian just said, it's not done. And went in, and thankfully she was working with Leslie Martin at Aperture, and Leslie was really understanding. And she knew she had more to do, and she did more. And so I agree that at the end of the day, I mean, I obviously believe that artists can use a lot of help because that's literally what I do. So I like to think I'm important and that I make a difference. If I didn't, I would feel so sad. But yeah, at the end of the day, with really, really personal work, that flow and that sort of, there's just a flow that can only come from the creator because it is so personal.
Yeah, and sequencing and making, it's such mysterious work. It's so mysterious, how sudden it feels right or it doesn't, and I cannot say why.
Yeah.
I just knew when it felt good. There's it's obvious, but there's no formula.
No, but of course, there's no point in doing this. But of course, if you went in and really analyzed, you could probably find some of those clues, right? To why you wanted this picture after this picture.
Of
go
course.
in like a forensic scientist and figure out, well, in this picture, it might be about form or it might be about subject, but there's usually some clue there. When you know you've got it, you don't need to get in there and start analyzing every little thing.
No, but actually, when I looked at the book after it was published, I saw so many relationships and things that were happening between pictures that I didn't consciously see while I was doing the book.
Right.
And the same thing happens with my work. When I'm shooting, I discover why I did what I did afterwards. That's just the way I work. I don't know exactly, or I think I know what I'm looking for. But I know that the real thing isn't going to be what I went looking for. It's going to be what kind of escaped my will.
Well, I think that's the part of making art that makes it so much like a self-therapy session. Like when people talk about learning about themselves from making work, often when an artist is asked, why do you paint? Why do you draw? Why do you photograph? The answer is often to learn about myself. And that is how that happens. You go out, you make work, you're not sure what you're doing. I wrote a film once when I was still making films back in my former life. I wrote a script and it was a short film, so it was a very short script. And it just came out of me in one night. I'd been thinking about something really odd and wacky that had happened to a friend of mine who was a nurse in a psychiatric hospital, and I couldn't get this little moment in time of something that had happened to her out of my head. And then I sat down to write. I would sit down to write as often as I could. And just the story poured out of me as if I was possessed. And I finished the script in one night. And then I read it as if I hadn't written it.
Right.
And I read it and I was like, oh, this is what I wanted to say. I learned what it was I wanted to say as the reader of it, not when I wrote it.
Right. Exactly.
It's just really fascinating how that happens. It's painful when it's not happening, and, when we have blocks, whether it's writer's block or any sort of creative block, that can be obviously very painful. But when it's flowing, and of course, sometimes you have to just get through it, right? So you have to just go keep making work, whether you think it's good or not, and just somehow bust that door down and get to the other side. I know it's really, really difficult when one is filled with self-doubt. I always say to people when they say, well, I'm not making good work now, I don't have anything to say. I always say, well, just go do it anyway. You don't have to show it to anyone, but just go do it anyway, because you have to figure out how to bust down that door back into your unconscious and back into your confidence.
Yeah, I never stopped shooting, even with self-doubt or anything. What I had trouble doing is making sense of it after I did it.
Right.
That's why it took long. But making the work, I'm always made work. But maybe I leave it to sit in drawers for a little longer than I should.
Or maybe it's the right amount of time.
Yeah. No, it's the right amount of time. Now that I'm just getting older, I'm feeling, I just want to I want to start wrapping loose ends up and start something new.
Mm-hmm. So how does it work with, there are two things I really curious about. You can tackle them in whatever order you want. One is, I'm curious what the status is of your video work, which I had written down as a question before you mentioned it, because I know you shot a lot of video of the girls. But I also, I'm curious, I don't think I really know what it means to be a member of Magnum. So if you could sort of, answer both those things, I'm really curious.
Yeah, when I had a hold of a video camera in the mid-90s, I just filmed as much as I photographed, but I never really knew what to do with it. Mm-hmm. And then especially with the girls, the whole work started mostly with film, because I would first ask them to like interview each other, or let's pretend that you're in a TV show and you're dancing, let's pretend this, let's pretend that. And I would set up the video camera on a tripod, and I would just watch in awe. And then I would be, oh, hell, I should take a picture of this. So while the video camera was running, I would get, my Hasselblad and start shooting. And then at night, I would look at the video and put pause and say, damn it, why can't I take a picture like this? Why are my pictures so stiff? So then I realized, oh, yeah, I'll just do the pictures while I film. So they went together. So I ended up having a ton of film. I would film them while they dressed up. It was a time where I would record everything, not only with Guille and Belly, but I would record everything in my life. So I have like 70 hours of video of them across the years. And I always knew I wanted to do something with it. Never knew exactly what, but I was always too busy, how long video takes to edit and watch. And so I never really got to it. And just to make it shorter, an Argentine director, Julia Solomonov, who made a movie that she was a bit inspired by aesthetically of Guille and Belly, called me up and said, have you ever thought of filming them? And I said, well, it happens I've filmed them. And she offered to help produce a film. So we've been applying for grants, and we got a little Sundance grant last year to help pay to start editing it. So that's where I'm at with that.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is. And I think it could be pretty wonderful. And it's not going to be, it's not about the making of, nothing could be more boring than that. I wanted to have a completely different register. We're still figuring out the structure, the feel of it, and all of that. Because, I didn't film with a storyboard. It's just a lot of random filming.
Right.
So that's the filming part. And I joined Magnum because I just wanted to have an agency, and I was choosing between agencies while I was living in New York, and somebody mentioned Magnum, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll try. I didn't know about Magnum. I knew about, obviously, the photographers that were in there, but I never knew there was an agency that they were a part of. So I applied and I got in. And I really didn't know what I was getting into.
So what were you getting into?
Well, what I got into changed through the years. When I first got in there, it was a little bit of a boys' club. Mm-hmm. A lot of a boys' club. Mm-hmm. But through the years and now, I think it's a pretty wonderful place. It has its problems, just like any place with a big group of strong egos.
Yep, of course.
But the community that we have now, since younger people started coming in and people from other backgrounds, from other countries, it just feels really good. I really like the people that I'm sharing it with now.
And how does that matter? So do you get assignments through Magnum, or do you, sorry, I should know this. It's really embarrassing that I don't know, but I don't know. And if I don't know, then probably a lot of people listening don't know. But what does it actually do to be a part of Magnum? Well,
Magnum is a cooperative, so we all decide its course, and we sort of choose the staff. And there's an editorial department, a commercial department, so you can get editorial jobs, which of course are much less now.
Right.
Yep. Before that used to be the backbone of the agency. Now it's sort of a side thing almost. And, the staff looks for commercial jobs or editorial jobs. Or you can say, like I've told them, I really would like to go to this part of the world. So if anything comes up,
Right.
have me in mind. So that gives me opportunities. And then also there's photographer-led projects, which are the best things when that happens. A group of photographers has we have an idea to go do work about something, and we find funds through collectors or through museums, and we go do it. So it really is very varied.
And it seems like Magnum's doing more like workshops and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, there's more workshops and the square sale because, of course, we need to survive.
Right. No, I think it's great.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
plugging it. By mentioning it, I'm plugging it.
Yeah, no, and I think the workshops are working out. I really enjoyed doing that, the long-term mentorship with Greg. That was the first one, so...
I thought your students were incredible, by the way. I was like really so impressed. I told so many people that the caliber was really amazing. I mean, there was only like a couple of moments of being like not knowing what to say because the work was not ready yet. The work hadn't evolved enough. And so it was sort of tough to sort of get in there. But I thought the ratio of that to really mature bodies of work was amazing. Like the best I've ever experienced. Like,
really? Oh, that's
Yeah.
so nice to hear. When I do workshops, I get really protective of the students.
Yeah.
And I really care,
I thought that really came through. I thought you and Greg, it was really clear that you had developed real relationships with the people. And I was just super, super blown away, to be honest, by the whole experience. I said to Jackie Bates, who I did it with, and also to other people that, I do a lot of sort of guest critiquing things. And I was like, oh my God, I wish they could all be like that. Like it was just
Really?
a really
that's
amazing
great to hear.
experience for me personally. So yeah, no, it was wonderful. Well, so before we wrap up, can you talk about what you're working on now? I know a lot of artists don't like to talk about what they're working on currently, but it's worth an ask.
Yeah, I have this project I began in 2014, and it actually started through Magnum group project that we had. It's in Wisconsin, and it's based off of Wisconsin Death Trip, which was a book I saw when I was a kid, and that sort of led me into photography. So I went in this Magnum project. Wisconsin came up. I knew I wanted to go to Black River Falls, which is the town where most of those pictures were taken in that book. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do something there. Mm-hmm. And so that was 2014, and I just went back 3-4 times, and now I'm starting to wrap it up. If you ask me what it's about, no, I can't say right now.
That's okay. Normal.
But that's exactly what I'm figuring out as I try to set it into a book. What am I saying? Why? What's this for? Why did I go so much? Why am I fascinated with this place? Why am I shooting like this? I'm still figuring that out.
You've arrived back, I sense, at a place of feeling like photography is worthwhile.
Oh, yeah. It's photography. Sometimes I feel really silly. Sometimes I feel like a buffoon being a photographer, especially because the way I work, I go into people's lives. I'm not like doing self-portraits or studio shoots. So being in other people's lives sometimes makes me feel a little bit foolish. I don't know. I that's why I can't really embed myself with people when I'm working on something, because I need to withdraw and remember that I'm my own person, that I have my own life. And then I can go back in, and then I have to go back out. But I forgot why I was saying this.
Well, I asked you if the crisis of feeling that photography might not be worthwhile had been averted.
Oh, no, it's all I know how to do, and I love it, And when I'm not doing it, I'm a little lost. It's my only way of connecting the dots. The one thing I'm doing when I'm sort of feeling far away from it is I started like painting a little, which I have no idea how to paint or draw. So it's just for me. But it really helps me remember that I'm a much better photographer than that. It's helping me go back to shooting and enjoying it more.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that one way to keep the passion for photography alive is to do something that they feel they're not good at. But I really like this strategy.
No. I think I kind of simplified it, but yeah.
I'm just kidding around. Look, I mean, people who listen to the podcast, the most devoted listeners will know that I often have my own, struggles and crises over if what I'm doing with my life is important at all, or whether it's silly and insufficient for my one time here in terms of contributing. Because the way I was raised, my mom just passed away like 6 weeks ago, so I was going to quote her, but it's hard. My mom, that was, how we were raised was the most important thing was to be a mensch, which for those non-Yiddish speaking people listening just means a good person. But it was always that. It was a refrain in my household was to be a good person during your one time on the planet and to contribute. And, so I really struggle with that. So when I hear, artists talk about that or struggle with what they're doing, I really relate to that. And I think it's a really worthwhile, I don't feel bad about that struggle. I don't feel like I'm being hard on myself. Sometimes people try and tell me not to feel that way and say I'm being too hard on myself. And I don't think it's about that. I think it's perfectly good to wonder that. Mm-hmm. If you are coming up short, then figure out what more you can do, or figure out why it's important to just do the thing you love. I mean, it's very much in keeping with sort of Eastern Buddhist philosophy that the most important thing is to, be true to yourself and do the thing you really love, because then you will be the best person you can be, and that will be better for everyone you come into contact with. And I really do believe that. And so often I come right back to that place. That's where I wind up when I'm thinking about this. I wind up right back there. And I think it's an important sort of preoccupation.
Yeah, no, when I drift away or start, questioning it, I always come back also because it's storytelling. When I remember that I'm mostly a storyteller in the way I work, I think that's important. We all know storytelling is what keeps us alive, hearing all through history. I mean, history is basically storytelling through unreliable eyewitness accounts. Yeah. And when I remember that I'm part of that tradition, when I remember that I'm in that realm of poetry and just connecting different lives, different stories, and having some kind of record of lives lived, I think that's really important. And that's when I really feel it's worth it, and I don't feel silly about it. But I have to remind myself, that it's not, okay, I'm alone in my studio doing this little thing that, who knows, maybe 1,000 people look at. But then I remember that's just the way it is. And then everything starts getting connected. Mm-hmm. And if you touch somebody, if somebody sees the pictures and feels less alone, that's huge. When I remember all that, it's important. Just like poetry, poetry is huge. It's so important. But you could also feel foolish being a poet, right? Mm-hmm. Sitting around writing about small things.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, they're really the most important things.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and I think that's a great place to stop. So thank you so much for hanging out with me this afternoon. It's this afternoon for me. It's not quite there yet for you, but thank you so much, Alessandra. And hopefully we'll get to hang out one of these days.
Yeah, thanks, Sasha. This was great. I really, really like talking to you.
Thank you. Likewise. Okay, take care. Be well.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
PhotoWork with Sasha Wolf is produced by me, Michael Chauvin-Dalton of Real Photo Show. The executive producer is Sasha Wolf, and our theme music is by J. Walter Hawks. You can hear PhotoWork on all your favorite podcast platforms. Please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Spotify, and be sure to subscribe on any one of those services or wherever you listen to podcasts.